Rushanara, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to start off with asking you all to talk me through what, as the furloughing scheme comes to an end later this year, what the impact will be on employment in each of your sectors, and how much you see redundancies becoming ever increasingly prevalent, and the scale of that. So maybe I'll start off with Tanza.
We surveyed our members, and I think 44% of them anticipate more redundancies as the furlough scheme tapers off, and obviously that depends very much on when the summer season gets going. But that was with a July start, which is probably quite early now, given where we are. So I am worried that the longer it is delayed, the summer season, and if we miss it altogether, then that number will be considerably higher. So we've already either lost or have at risk at the moment. This was in the spring, 37% of jobs within our area. So in outbound travel, that's about 88,000 jobs, and that's going to rise if the summer is delayed and there is no support, without a shadow of a doubt. And as we're at a very different stage of the recovery cycle to hospitality and retail. And I think the question earlier was, is there upward pressure on wages? Well, for us, we're still shedding workers rather than out actively recruiting them until the brakes come off and the demand comes back.
Yep. So just on that, you mentioned delays. If there was a delay of, say, 2 weeks, what would that look like in terms of impact on jobs versus, say, 4 weeks? Have you done any kind of projections around that?
No, we haven't. But as I said, the summer season, which if you say from May to September is, a normal year, a pre-COVID year, 2/3 of the volume. So, 2 weeks, and this is not a high margin business. So, 2 weeks lost could be the difference in a normal year between profit and loss, frankly, for a lot of companies. And at the moment, they're already sort of gasping for air. So, every day counts, really. I don't know exactly how we would quantify the additional number of redundancies, but the longer you go, the higher risk it is.
And of course, for your sector, it's interdependence with other countries and what happens elsewhere. Can you just talk through what you think the government needs to be doing collaboratively with other countries to help to create the climate for opening up, first of all, but also making that sustainable?
Well, I think we talked earlier about, a kind of interoperable, common system of vaccine certificates that would have sort of generally recognised acceptance and build confidence on both sides, for people travelling and for countries receiving people. I think that's important. I think making sure that, again, we do this with countries that if tests are required, then testing capacity is available in those countries, so that people travelling, from the UK don't think, well, I'm going to spend the last 2 days of my holiday having to travel a long way or to pay a high price to get a test to return. So there are some very practical things that can be done on the ground to ease the situation. And as I said, for people returning into the UK or arriving international passengers in the UK, making sure that border force is properly manned and that the systems are there so that we don't have delays at the airports. I think as I say, other countries are speeding up their vaccination rates and definitely showing an appetite to accept British travellers, British holiday makers. The obstacles are really on our side, I think, in terms of taking, as I say, an ultra cautious approach at the moment, and we really need that to be a sort of risk-based going forward. So
just one final one for you, which is the risk-based, and we all know that it's not a trade-off. If the economy has to shut down again, if it's not sustainable, then that costs costs jobs as well. But there's a broader debate ahead of the G7 summit about vaccines in countries that have got very limited amounts of vaccine access. and global travel isn't just confined to rich countries that can buy vaccines and get their populations vaccinated. Do you have any reflections on how that will, if we don't get moving and get the world vaccinated, how that impacts on your sector and the travel business more broadly?
I think it is a very, very big issue. I think the government sort of strategy at the moment is based around variants of concern, which arise, and those are much more likely, not epidemiologists, to arise in countries where there is relatively low vaccination rates and where the virus has the opportunity to mutate and to spread amongst people who haven't been vaccinated. So logic would say that the sooner we can get the world vaccinated, then the lower the incidence of variants of concern and the easier it will be for us to travel. So I think it's absolutely linked to that sort of macro objective of world vaccination. If we're not going to have repeated sort of setbacks and shocks where a new variant arises, we don't know whether it's going to be sort of able to be dealt with by current vaccines, and that will put everything back again. So I think the two go together very, very closely.
Right. Thank you very much. Helen Dickinson, over to you.
I think so. There are 3.1 million people who work in retail. I think the numbers are a few months out of date because they don't publish them on a sector basis that regularly. But I think there are somewhere between 300,000 to 500,000 people who are still on furlough, or certainly were in February or March. I think retail, it doesn't have the same sort of severity of some of the issues that Mark and I'm sure Kate will highlight. I think that the big question, well, two points. One is what happens when the scheme ends, as long as we are not back in any form of restriction. So if we end up, with parts of the industry needing to close again, then obviously there will be an effect on job losses. So that would be, it can't be an independent decision of what the restrictions might look like that sit around it. And then secondly, I think the number of job losses that we may see in the future is in the round dependent on all the things that we've been talking about during the course of this conversation. So coming back to think, the rent moratorium, the space for tenants and landlords to negotiate that outstanding rent debt, what happens from the government's perspective with the review of business rates, those are the sorts of things that will impact what effect we have in the short to medium term in terms of numbers of job losses. But it's true to say that we have not seen, there's still 67,000, I think, was the number between December 2019 and December 2020 in terms of jobs lost. But in the scheme of 3.1 million, while every one of those is I'm sure a really desperate situation for the people involved, actually it could have been so much worse. So I think it's all to play for in terms of what happens now and what decisions are taken now, that we don't squander any of the benefits that have been generated through the decisions that have already been taken.
If the government did the things that you need them to do, you would expect unemployment to not grow, the numbers who end up being made redundant at the end of the furlough period by how much?
I would expect that the trajectory that we were already on, which is a slow reduction in the number of people that are employed by the industry, would continue. So that was a pre-pandemic trend, and is to do with, again, coming back to what we were talking about right at the beginning, the transformation in terms of the way that people shop. So that the nature of skills in retail in the future will be different, and there will be fewer jobs in the medium to longer term future. But that was a trajectory that was a pre-pandemic trajectory, as opposed to one caused by what's happened by COVID.
Sorry, my question was, if the government did the things that you just listed to mitigate the risks in the COVID context?
Yes, it would. Yes.
you would keep unemployment down quite dramatically. But if it didn't do things, we have a number on what sort of numbers are we doing? If they don't do as you tell them to, shall we say? If they don't
deign to tell them, we encourage them to make good decisions. So I think it's store closures, any sorts of closures, curtailment of operations. Those are jobs that are connected with those premises. So if people's costs and economics of those premises stop working, then they will close them, and that will have consequences on jobs. So that's why what does happen with rent and rates is so important. What the numbers are, we haven't made an attempt to quantify it, but there's no doubt, we're talking about tens of thousands of jobs, given that we know that the number of people who are still on furlough is in the hundreds of thousands. It's those jobs that are at risk of going one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. Kate Nichols.
Thank you. I will try not to repeat what Helen has just said, but I'll try and give it a hospitality flavour, because we have done some of the calculations about what the impact would be in terms of job losses if the government doesn't get the right decisions in place. I think I would just start by saying the decision point of getting those decisions right is now. It does matter for our businesses. If you do delay it for just 2 weeks, it will have an impact straight away on jobs in the sector. So, that is because furlough, it's not about when furlough ends, it's when about furlough costs start to increase, and they start to increase the 1st of July quite dramatically. So the reason that we've lost so much money in hospitality over the course of the last 5 months is that it has cost our businesses to administer furlough for the government, and the grants have not touched the sides in covering those PAYE, NIC costs and the amount that we have to pay. We are currently paying 5%, it goes up to 10%. If you've got no revenue coming in, 10% of nothing, you can't afford to do. And the only point of flexibility in hospitality is your labour line. Everything else is a fixed cost that has to be met. Rent, rates, all of those things. The only thing you can do is to get rid of labour. So that is going to be an immediate impact. So from the 1st of July, if restrictions don't end on the 21st of June and we're not moving into profit, from the 1st of July, we are paying business rates. We've got a £93 million bill that will hit the hospitality sector in terms of business rates. And you've got your furlough costs increasing. So that's where it starts to become unsustainable straight away. So you start to have that.
If there's a scientific basis for delay, they need to tell you now, is what you're saying.
Well, we understand we will get told on the 14th of June. If there is a scientific basis for delay, then we need to have the transparency so we know what needs to change within those 2 weeks. Otherwise, forgive us for not believing it will be 2 weeks. We can't just simply take that on trust. So we need to know what the metric is that needs to change in those 2 weeks to be able to take it forward. And then we need a simultaneous announcement of the support being extended. In Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, 100% business rates holidays have been given to hospitality for a full year. It gives those businesses breathing space to avoid having to make the tough decision between paying taxes and paying people. In England, we don't have that luxury. We will have to pay our taxes from day one. So that's what we need to have, is an announcement that those support measures will continue. In terms of the question that you asked about how many jobs are at risk as a result of that, we brought back about 1.2 million workers from furlough in hospitality in advance. So that's reflecting the heavy staffing costs that we've got in administering those restrictions. About 500,000 on flexible furlough, so whose wages therefore are determined, and the hours that they're employed are determined by the needs of the business. And that leaves about 200,000, 250,000 still protected by full furlough. It's those jobs on full furlough and those on flexi furlough that are most at risk, depending on how long the restrictions go on for, how long it takes for us to get reopen, and the sectors of the economy that are in hospitality that are most affected by those constraints. So nightclubs, events venues, wedding venues, none of whom can operate legally or in full. Those are the ones that are most challenged by any delay on the 21st of June, as well as our supply chain. And then I would just say, we've talked a lot about international travel. International travel is not just about British people going on holiday. It is about visitors coming and spending money in the UK, in our towns and city centres. International tourism is our third largest export earner, foreign tourists spend more in pubs, restaurants, hotels in your constituencies than all of our food and drink exports put together. So, you know, you will have a knock-on effect. The longer it takes for international travel to come back, it's not just about us going on holiday over August, it's about those people coming in and spending money in our constituencies and getting the hotels and the pubs and bars and hospitality moving in those town and city centres. So again, the longer it takes to bring back that international tourism, the more that those jobs are at risk. But that's the quantum of the jobs at risk. It will be between 250 and 500,000.
250 and 500,000 jobs.
Just on the basis that you've got 200 on full furlough.
Sorry, just one last thing on that, which is the likes of Tim Martins, now the Brexit backing boss of JD Wetherspoon's reportedly saying there should be visa schemes to allow EU migrants to come back in. And I hope he's eating lots of humble pie if he's talking about particular sectors that need foreign workers to come and work, to run our business, to sustain our businesses. But how does this sit with the 250,000 that might face unemployment? You know, is he, what is he talking about?
Clearly, that what I've just painted there for you is the worst case scenario, that we don't get our businesses open and that businesses are kept legally closed, because there is still a significant proportion, 25% of hospitality is closed by legislation until the 21st of June at the earliest. This is not just about easing restrictions in factories or on public transport, it's about businesses that can't open yet. So the worst case scenario is that is extended, the support is not extended, the quantum then that is at risk, if you don't get the rates, the rents, the furlough support extended, is that sort of 250 to 500,000, depending on how long it goes on for. The best case scenario is what you've described. We start to reopen the economy, we get to the 21st of June, we lift those restrictions, we can start to be profitable for the first time in 16 months, and we can trade our way out of this, and we protect those jobs that are on furlough. We take on more new people, particularly young people, as we expand and grow out of this. Then you will minimize the job losses. I think we're at about 5% unemployment. I think unemployment hasn't grown as much as anybody anticipated. We will then get towards the end of the year to a labour shortage, which we knew we were facing in December 2019. So we knew we had insufficient labour. But fundamentally, you know, over the course of the crisis, 1.3 million foreign workers, not just EU nationals, foreign workers have left the UK and are stuck abroad and can't come back even if they wanted to because of travel restrictions. So there is a shortage. Australia, recognising the importance of hospitality and tourism to its economy, has introduced an emergency coronavirus recovery visa. So that is one thing.
I think I'm going to have to end my questions here, but I suppose if we're going to have to switch to a charm offensive to migrant workers, unlike the hostilities that we've had for the last few years, down to the likes of Mr. Martin and others in the Brexit debates, because we will need, when there's a labour shortage, which we hope there will be, because our people will be made employed and kept in their jobs. That we do need a positive narrative on the economic benefits of those who need to come to fill the skills shortage. But thank you all very much for your contributions.